Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts here with a chatty kind of video today, fresh back from the amazing BookTube Prize meetup this weekend in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, hosted by Robert of Barter Hordes. It was a fantastic weekend. Loved meeting everyone, and I got so many ideas, and this is an output of one of those ideas. I'd like to branch out into doing videos when I have an idea and having a little chattier videos, not as rigidly structured around a list of books or what I'm currently reading, that type of thing, or tag. So I thought I would put this up today and see how it goes. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was my experience and an idea that came to me out of Victober. So this is my first time participating, and I'm reading The Pickwick Papers by Dickens. Look, don't at me. I understand it's not his best work. I'm reading it because I want to read where he started and the first, as a means of understanding his oeuvre and his contribution, and see how he progresses as a writer. But I also wanted to get some background and some more context for what I'm about to read this month. So I've done the Great Courses, the Victorian Age, and then I'm also completed the Victorian City. I think it's Life in Dickens Time, I think might be the name of it. Completed both of those books. And one of the things that really popped out at me was this concept of people now having to have multiple jobs where they didn't have to before. In the past, they had a craft or a trade, and they were supported by their trade unions or the rules that govern that type of work. Whereas now, as people are moving from the rural areas into the cities, those connections may not be there. People were struggling, and so they had to hustle and have multiple jobs. And this was something that appeared over and over again in things that I was reading. And I understand that this is a transformation of this society into industrialization. What started me thinking about this more and piqued my interest just this morning was I was having a conversation with Juan of Just One Reader. We were talking on Voxer. He wanted to know how the BookTube meetup went, and I was telling him about that. And he was telling me that he was in the middle of a horrible traffic jam because the taxi drivers were protesting. They were protesting Uber and the ride-sharing apps that are, in essence, making it very hard for them to do their job and ruining the infrastructure. And a light bulb went off again, and it reminded me of this. So we are also in a time where we're changing rapidly from industrialization to technology and automation. And the impacts are that many of the people impacted from this shift and this change that would otherwise have had jobs in factories and manufacturing and those types of things are now people who are underserved by our employment and have to have multiple jobs. And so the gig economy was created as a means, or it was sold as a means for the workers to have independence and to be able to set their own schedule and still make money and still be able to afford the type of lifestyle that they wanted on their terms. But just as was what happened in Dickens' time, it's been a pretty much of a rough shot for the people that are employed in those scenarios, because they have to do more work at less pay and have less stability and actually less freedom. So wow, that was a lot. So it made me wonder. And as you're going through Victober, are there things that you see that are threads that are still being pulled today in our time from Victorian age, or that are coming back because we're in this period of transition from one type of economy to another? I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts about that. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of chatting about books with strangers. So the reason this came up is we were all sitting and reading together on the second day. The first day we did a bookstore crawl and went to all the really great bookstores that are in Raleigh, Durham, which was lovely. And then we all needed some introvert time together the next day. So we had a lovely day sitting out and eating some food, and then sitting outside and reading together because the day was gorgeous. And then we went to a public library and sat and read together there. What was so funny was Jacqueline had a bookmark, and it said something to the effect of, in bold letters, "Ask me what I'm reading," or "Ask me about the book I'm reading." And we all just were aghast with horror at the idea that someone would actually want to be asked about their book. If I'm reading a book in public, I absolutely do not want you to ask me about my book. I'm trying to read. Don't bother me. So we just thought this was such a mismatch of a book, what a bookmark should be doing. And I was laughing about that. Then I'd say a few hours later, I'm sitting in the middle seat on my plane heading back to San Francisco, and I'm next to this poor gentleman. This guy had to be like 6'4", tall, lanky, fairly young guy, I'd say in his 20s. And he was doing everything he could to stay within the confines of his small seat that he was given. Bless his heart. He was just one of the best row partners I've ever had. And he was trying to sleep, and he was using his neck pillow in all these different contortions and mannerisms and ways so that he could get comfortable and try to catch a little bit of a nap for this big long flight. And at one point, he pulls out this huge chunkster of a book and puts it down and uses that as a prop. I couldn't see the book because he had the spine facing away from me and down. But of course I'm curious. So I keep looking over as I'm reading I'm on my second book now, and looking over. And finally he turns it over after waking up a little bit, and it's the goldfinch. So I really want to find out what he thinks, but I'm not going to do that because we still have hours left on this flight, and I don't want to have a conversation with a stranger. No matter how kind he was and generous in keeping his space confined to the limits that he had. So I'm sitting there and I'm just reading, but every once in a while I kind of glance over to see if I can catch a reaction. Is he rolling his eyes? Is he going backwards and kind of trying to reread things through? But it looked like he was reading at a good clip and getting into it. But at one point, I saw him all of a sudden grab it and start flipping to the back and kind of doing that book math was what I was imagining him saying. Was like, oh, it took me this long to get through this part. How much longer is it going to be for the rest? And I thought he was on the cusp of bailing. So I said, are you enjoying the goldfinch? And he turned and he looked at me and he said, I'm really, really liking it. Have you read it? So it opened up this tiny little conversation that we had amongst the two of us, which was lovely. And he hadn't read Dickens very much at all. He knew who Dickens was, but hadn't really read. And so I said, oh, pay attention to the names. The names are always really interesting. And we talked about Barber and Harbor because he had only just finished the portion where Theo is on his way to Vegas, where his father has come to pick him up. And he was like, oh, that Sandra, she makes me nervous. I don't think good things are about to happen. Bless his heart. But he promised me that he is not going to ditch it. He's going to keep going. But it was just really funny that I went against my instincts and actually had a conversation, and it ended up working perfectly. And I told him that we had read it together with a group of people doing a read along on YouTube, and maybe he will check us out and find and join our conversation. We'll see. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was I'm going to start talking about more of the events that I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm going to live vlog or vlog in real time, but I'll take some images and I'll probably do voiceovers and present them as little standalone videos, because I do live in such a great place and there is a bevy of things that are going on here that I think might be of interest to other people. So I'd like to expose that. So I'll tell you what interests me about the event that I go to, try to take some photos while I'm there that is not intrusive to the performance, and share any highlights or any interesting anecdotes that happened, and do that maybe on a regular basis as I go to these things. And so that's it. So really excited to hear what your thoughts are, and specifically about Victober, and your thoughts about where we are and where the Victorians were. Are there any parallels? And that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.